Good afternoon. I'm Robert Moore, Acting Co-President of Colorado College.
I'm Mike Edmonds, Acting Co-President of the college.
Thank you for being with us today. We know this is a very difficult time, and we hope that by providing more information today, we'll help everyone as we all adjust. As you know from our recent announcements, because of the quarantine of 3 of our residence halls, we're shifting our plans to meet our students' academic needs while reducing the risk of virus spread on campus. To recap, we're doing the following. All classes are moving to remote delivery for the remainder of Block 1, and most classes will be in remote delivery for the remainder of the fall semester. We are significantly reducing the number of students living on campus. Students who may continue to live on campus or come to campus starting Block 2 include those with in-person or hybrid classes for Blocks 2, 3, and 4, students experiencing serious hardships, international students already on campus, and bridge scholars. Our colleagues campus-wide have been committed to reducing risk of spreading COVID-19 on campus. We have a robust testing, random retesting, and virus mitigation protocol. All members of the campus community are asked to sign the community commitment regarding COVID-19 measures, and the student conduct code requires all students follow safety protocols. On-campus students receiving positive test results are immediately isolated, contact tracing is conducted, and those exposed are moved to quarantine. By mid to late September, the college will have its own lab on campus with rapid testing, approximately a 15-minute turnaround time.
Our students have demonstrated great responsibility and care. They are wearing masks, social distancing, washing hands. They are coming forward when they have symptoms of a possible exposure. We are collaborating with El Paso County Public Health, and we are all learning together. This morning, we were in meetings with the county health department and will continue to work with them toward an even more robust plan that allows us to have students on campus having a quality experience while reducing risk. I'd like to thank our students for demonstrating responsibility in their actions and response to the virus and to these changes. I also want to acknowledge our parents and alumni for their concern and for their support, and our many faculty and staff who are working so hard to support our students. This adjustment to our plans is very disruptive and very disappointing for all of us. But we are committed to coming out of this a better institution with a better quality experience for our students. You have submitted many questions, and I now ask the presenters to address as many of those as possible. But before they do that, I would also like for them to introduce themselves.
Hi there, my name is Leslie Irvine. I'm the Vice President and Director of Athletics.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Rochelle Dickey, she, her, hers. I serve as the Acting Dean of Students and Acting Vice President for Student Life.
Hi everyone, I'm Pedro de Araújo and I'm the Vice Provost.
Anybody else or just me? So hi everybody, I'm Brian Young. I'm the Vice President of IT, and we'll also try to help moderate the questions that have come in. We'll spend our time today addressing as many of the questions as we can, the ones that were pre-submitted. If you have additional questions, please enter them into the Q&A feature here on this session. If you're out there watching on Facebook, you can enter your questions in the comments. And in the limited time that we have, we'll determine how we can address those questions. We'll try to get them in the order that they're received. You can also send questions to our COVID-19 at coloradocollege.edu site. Responses to those will be added to our FAQ, which continues to grow, and we'll continue to add them. So if you think of things later, please send them to that COVID-19 at coloradocollege.edu. And we'll put them up on our resource page as well. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions, for your patience through this, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. I know front and center about our academic mission and our academic progression for our students created many questions, and so we'll start with some of those. When will students know if they're taking a class that allows them to come to campus?
Hi, Brian, I can help with this one. We're preparing individual letters for students, as President Moore has said. For academic reasons, we are allowing students that were registered for in-person classes for blocks 2, 3, and 4 to return to campus by block 2. We're also allowing students they're enrolled in a hybrid class with a lab requirement, right, to return to campus by block 2, if they were enrolled in blocks 2, 3, and 4. Dean Dickey and myself are crafting an email to all of these students, and these are the academic reasons for them to come. And students in Senior Art Studio Seminar, they're also invited back. And we're crafting this letter, and we're hoping to send these emails by tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, we should send individual emails to these students that for academic reasons are allowed to continue or start to engage with campus services by block 2.
Thank you, Pedro. Couple of other questions in the academic realm that I'll ask our panelists to chime in on. A couple of questions around, I'm taking a class in block 2 that permits me to come back to campus. Can I then stay and live on campus for the rest of the semester?
Yes.
I like when they're short and sweet and we can get them answered quickly. Thank you, Pedro. What if I want to drop one of my CC 100 or 120 classes?
So first of all, we strongly encourage first-year students to try to complete CC 100 and CC 120. Those are gateway courses. Those are courses that are allowed for a lot of flexibility afterwards for you to schedule and be able to even return to campus the following semester. However, if there are extenuating circumstances where you would need to drop the second portion of drop CC 120 or so, we can work with these students. These students should contact their staff advisor. They should have conversations with the staff advisor to be able to plan for what that means in terms of coming back to campus, and then probably work also with my office if taking this block off will require for us to exempt them from a particular requirement or so. So the short answer here is we strongly encourage you to continue and take the sequence CC 100, CC 120. If that is not possible, please have conversations with your staff advisor so that we can process a block off that's going to come to my office eventually.
And a couple of more questions in this realm of, I'm thinking about dropping a block, possibly the first 2. Who should I be talking with? Who do I go to? And what should be the conversation?
Okay. So if you are a first-year student, and you're considering dropping block 1 and potentially applying for a gap semester or petitioning for a gap semester or a gap year, you have until next Tuesday, the 8th, to do that, because that is the extended date by which you can drop a block. In this case, you would have to go to the admissions office to request an extension for a gap semester or a gap year. If you are a returning student, and you want to take a block off, or you want to take the semester off for a couple blocks off, you should be in contact with the Student Opportunities and Advising Hub, and they will meet with your advisor for sure to be able to have a conversation about what that means for your academic plan. But they should be able to start the paperwork, right, that would allow you to take time off from school.
Thanks again, Pedro. A couple of other on the academic front, because these generated quite a few advice, things you could offer to students that are asking, I want to take a class elsewhere during my leave. How does that transfer work? What do I need to do to make sure that that fits into the CC curriculum?
That's a great question, Brian. So one of the, so typically our policy for transfer courses is the following. So a student, first student that's been approved to take classes elsewhere, right? So what are the criteria for those? So one is a student potentially is taking a course that fits within their academic schedule or the academic planning, and it's a course that typically is not offered at Colorado College, right? Those are types of courses that we would allow those courses to transfer. So not any course. So an example from that is sometimes there are certain departments that would allow you to take a very specific course in a subject that we don't offer at all, and it would make total sense for you to do this and transfer that in and make progression towards your major. Those are things that are acceptable. You can also, there are also sometimes students that take involuntary leaves or sometimes even voluntary leaves with conditions for return. And in that case, you know, some of the conditions could be that they take classes elsewhere to be able to be readmitted to the college. In general, the process is you would start the process at the registrar's office where you would submit a list of classes to the registrar's office to see if it meets this criteria, and eventually it can come up to my office for me to make a determination about transfer courses. So the bottom line here is, yes, you can transfer courses from a different institutions, but they have to fit within your academic plan, and they have to be potentially courses that we don't at the college offer very often.
Great, thanks, Pedro. For a couple of questions in the area of billing and potential refunds, will students who were not in Loomis, Matthias South, will they receive room and board refunds, block 1 and beyond?
Thanks. We were just trying to see who wanted to jump in and answer that. Credits to student accounts will be processed for the time other students were unable to live in campus housing, so there'll be more information about that.
Great. Thank you, Rochelle. Rochelle, can we also talk about food charges for student accounts from Block 1?
Sure. So students will be charged based on the amount of dollars that they have used up to the date they leave campus, in addition to a prorated fee.
A couple of questions that have come in around, can financial aid money be used to pay for other off-campus housing since we're no longer able to live on campus?
President Moore, I'm happy to take that. So regarding financial aid, so no, only those students who were already approved to be off campus prior to August 31st will receive financial aid dollars to fund any off-campus housing. So students who do not have a home to return to, we do have some students who have told us that they don't have a home to return to, or they're independent students. They can apply to stay on campus. We have set up a special campus request at coloradocollege.edu if you feel you have that need, students. and all others will need to return home or fund their off-campus housing through other means. And again, more information can be coming from financial aid if you want to drill down on some of the details, but that's some of the basic information for you.
Thank you. Pedro, back to an academic question that I know you could help answer that's come in a couple of times. Can you explain, just walk through for parents and for students how they can get a full CC experience being on campus starting in J Block?
Sure, absolutely. So number one, the college has already said that we're going to make a decision about the spring semester, which would include, in a sense, J Block in October, right? So we're going to know more about exactly how we'll be able to deliver our curriculum next spring. But students have, even if a student, for example, is not taking classes this particular semester, given our new flexible model in terms of blocks that we're offering throughout the entire year, including the summer, it's still possible for a student to be completely full-time in the sense of an academic progression, right? That is taking 6 to 8 blocks starting in J, right? So students would have the option there to start their academic year in block J and then take blocks J, 5, 6, 7, 8, and potentially A, B, and C, right, in the summer. And that's those would be part of the our comprehensive tuition, right? So one of the things that students should take into consideration as they're making this plan is to look at the course grids, is to think about what it is that they're thinking for even the following academic year. How does that curriculum fits within their their needs and so forth, and kind of plan for that, right? However, I would still encourage students to be looking at courses this fall, even if they're delivered remotely, as to try to just have more options in order to make academic progress, right? So I don't know, Brian, if I'm answering exactly what you've asked, but yeah, students can definitely have a full year's worth of classes starting in Block J.
Great, thank you. And because a couple of chats have come in too, Pedro, I'll just reiterate something that you've shared already for those that maybe missed it. If you are on campus for Block 2, finishing your academic progression, and you choose to stay for 3 and 4, you can do that. And so please know that is an option.
Absolutely, Brian. One of the things I think that the easiest way to think about is once you receive the invitation to be on campus, starting Block 2, you are welcome to stay on campus for the entire fall until the end of Block 4.
Great, thanks. I think for Dean Dickey, a couple of questions here on the housing front. What is the process for students to check out of their on-campus housing if they choose to do that?
Thanks very much, Brian. There will actually be an email going out to all students this afternoon that's going to give you all the details on the move-out process, including local storage options, options to have your belongings shipped, so look for that. Regarding students who will be moving to campus, look for those emails coming in around September 11th to look for those. And while I've got the floor, I'll just go ahead. I know there were a number of questions directed at me, so if it's okay, Brian, I'll just kind of answer those en masse. There were questions about appeal process to live on campus. As President Moore mentioned at the beginning, there are already some groups of students who have been pre-approved to stay on campus. A lot of this is based on these students having prior approval where they told us they were in need to come to campus early or stay late, or already told us of some extenuating circumstances. And we don't want to have to make those students tell your story again. We've got your story there. Thank you for sharing. We're in the process of reaching out to those students, or perhaps students you have already heard from us about pre-approval to stay. If you still feel that you are in need of staying, we're looking at 2 avenues, students, to really try to assist you. There's the COVID-19 Emergency Fund that's accessed through the main COVID page. And we're really looking at that if you find yourself in some financial need. And there's students have received support for, food insecurity, some other financial assistance types of things. That's the best way to get assistance from the college there. We are pleased that we have students sitting on that funding committee with us. In addition, we've set up a different email address, campusappeals@coloradocollege.edu, and mostly students are using this if they really find that they're facing housing insecurity. So as I mentioned before, some students have said, I don't have a safe home to go home to, I don't have a home to go home to. So please, students, let us know if you have that need through the campus appeals. I'm going to move right into the question about students using the supplemental housing. As many of you know, we've got the lodges and West Edge that are up north. So can students stay there if they're not taking classes? So the answer to that is yes. The college actually works through a company where we lease rooms and spaces up there. Students are more than welcome to work through the leasing company for the lodges and West Edge to be able to go ahead and lease and rent those spaces. In terms of the spaces that the college has reserved up there, if we find that there's a great demand for that housing, we'll go ahead and release those spaces as well. So the lodges in West Edge are going to be some really great resources for our students who are looking for places to stay, and that's not contingent upon you being able to take classes. So a couple of things I want our on-campus students and students who are approved and will be joining us. Room assignments may be likely to change for the spring. We are continuing to examine ways to reduce the likelihood of what the county health department has said is called rolling quarantines. As we've said before, we know quarantine is not a situation that's desirable, sometimes necessary for risk mitigation, but we'll be continuing to look at ways for students who are living with us on campus. What can we do to try to mitigate the risk of that happening again? So there may be some shuffling of room assignment students as we examine perhaps living in cohorts, different pod types of situations. Does the college need to look at situations where every student is in a single room with a private bathroom? Because certainly, we know that a lot of the virus is spread through contact in restrooms. So just a heads up on that. Again, doing what we can to make your experience, if you're living with us on campus, the best. Quarantines might happen, but we're looking at ways to try to reduce that. I also want to take this opportunity to talk about the college's 3-year residency requirement. So certainly we have maintained a 3-year residency requirement, which is the requirement for students to live on campus for 6 semesters before they do leave campus. So that's typically our seniors who've been approved to do that. However, we've really had to re-examine that. As we know, our students and families are in difficult and unique circumstances due to COVID-19. So a lot of questions has come in from non-seniors who said, okay, if I'm looking at trying to sign a 6-month lease off campus and then I'm approved to come to campus for classes, I might have to break the lease. We don't want to find our students in those situations. So we are currently lifting our 3-year residency requirement to allow students and families to make the decision that's best for them at this time. So we want to be clear that this lifting of the 3-year residency requirement is in effect only for this current 2020 to 21 academic year. And then we will definitely revisit that in the fall. So we may reinstate 3-year residency requirements after we take another look at this. Perhaps we might explore a transitional year with a 2-year residency requirement, but at this time we're lifting that. That being said, here at Colorado College, we still believe strongly in and value the benefits of an on-campus residential community and the developmental support that's offered by our outstanding staff of our RAs, our student workers, our resident assistants, and certainly by our RLCs, our residential life coordinators. And it's really been affirming to hear from many of you as students that you also value those benefits and additional support particularly during this time of COVID-19. So we are confident that many of our students will still want to stay with us as part of the on-campus Colorado College community. We also know that many students are thinking, well, if I go live off campus, you know, maybe that reduces the risk of being quarantined, because again, we know being in the residence halls or any situation in quarantine is certainly not a good situation for folks to be in. We have had some off-campus students who have found themselves in a quarantine situation. So we do know that because of the nature of this virus, it can happen on campus or off campus. Regardless, as you know, President Edmonds said, that folks doing the right things and following risk mitigation protocols. So we've been able to provide some tremendous support for our students who live on campus and who have had to be in quarantine or isolation. And that's included consistent check-ins from our case management staff who work with the contact tracers. So students on campus have been giving that support. There's also been meal deliveries for students living on campus. However, we cannot provide that same support for students living off campus who may also find themselves in quarantine and isolation. And we've actually had a couple of off-campus students who found themselves in quarantine or isolation who asked, who requested and were approved to move back on campus because they desired and really needed those type of support systems that I just outlined. And finally, the last thing I want to cover while I've got the floor is folks did ask about, so if students are, you know, being able to live off campus more freely, what type of support are we offering to help students make some wise choices about that? So we've got a wonderful RLC, an off-campus RLC, Luis Valdez, in conjunction with the Wellness Resource Center and Dr. Heather Horton, and our Colorado Springs Police Department resource officer that's assigned to Colorado College, that's Officer Sid Santos. They typically conduct off-campus informational workshops, usually just for the seniors who are approved to live off campus, but now they'll really step up those efforts and make sure that they're providing those workshops to students who want to live off campus. So practical tips on signing leases, financial commitments, and also that information that we really want all of our students to know about being good neighbors, living in the neighborhood. And it's wonderful that we hear from our neighbors that our students are great members of the community. So that's a lot of information that I wanted to share with you all right now. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Brian for other questions.
Thank you, Dean Dickey, and I'm sure there'll be some others that come in. But on the topic of space, would like to ask, and possibly Pedro and Leslie could chime in, but would like to ask, can we talk a little bit about just access to facilities, to our fitness center, library, and that access for on-campus students as well as potential for off-campus?
Yeah, Brian, I'm happy to jump in there. I mean, obviously, we're a very active campus, and we certainly pride ourselves in providing those types of health and wellness activities. And so for the students who are approved to be on campus, we are focused on providing access and plan to do that for the fitness center. For our student athletes who are remaining on campus based on the academic reasons and progress, we have our coaches and athletic training staff and a protocol in place that has been in place all fall to still give them access to practice as well as the strength and conditioning space. And I know that we're in ongoing conversations just as we think about the services across campus and providing that type of experience to our students who are here. And then what I will say also is we're actively engaged in conversations. Pedro and I were in a conversation this morning where I think it's fair to say we're certainly wanting to support our students as best we can during this year. So we are exploring the idea of managing restricted access to certain facilities to our students who are choosing to remain and live in the community. Obviously, you know, we have to think about the capacity on our campus, but I know that there's a commitment to trying to provide some type of guide for our students who are living off campus, and that would also provide an opportunity to give guidance on what they may or may not have access to. You know, other thing I did want to throw out is as we encourage our students to stay on campus during block break and minimize travel, we'll be committed to, say, having spaces like Hanan and the pool and the fitness center open with capacity restrictions to make sure that there's active opportunities on our campus.
Brian, most of this applies to the library as well. I mean, Leslie, I think, gave a very good summary of what we're trying to explore. We do understand that there are potentially some seniors that are going to be living, you know, off campus that may need to use on a restricted amount of time in certain facilities on campus to be able to make academic progress towards this degree in terms of their senior projects and things of that nature. And we're going to look at those seniors and those students and try to accommodate some of that to the best of our ability.
And Pedro, while I have you, I have a few combined questions that I know you can answer. Students just asking steps or process if they're remote for continuing advising.
Brian, sorry, you broke the beginning of the question. Can you ask again, please?
Sorry, yeah, so just a couple of questions around the idea of student advising. And that while remote or while not on campus, that number one, that process is still in place and we encourage that advising, but maybe you could just talk about sort of the steps a student would take to engage.
Yes. That's a great question. In fact, I think that advising now is critical. You know, and I actually think that students and not only the staff advisors, but especially the faculty advisors and mentors, right? I think that connection between students and faculty is very important right now, given that we're remote. So short answer to your question, Brian, is yes, advising is happening and will happen actively on campus. Of course, not a lot of in-person advising. So students are going to be doing what we're doing right now with their advisors. Students should be reaching out to the faculty advisors for informal sessions, to have conversations with them, to run ideas by them in terms of what it is that they can do, how can they be engaged, are there any extra projects that I can work on, you know, aside from taking these classes. Students can also engage with their staff advisors, you know, and have conversations about their academic progress and potentially for co-curricular activities, even if they are not necessarily living on campus. So even though we may not be on campus and not all faculty or all staff are actually here on campus physically receiving appointments, we are still here. Our presence is still felt here on, you know, in the community, right? And we're fortunate enough to have this technology that allows us to speak with them and see them. But you know, if you're old-fashioned, you can also call people, right? The phones still exist, right? So we can do that as well, right? So I think that the fact that we're not necessarily 100% here and we're limited in terms of our mobility and how we can interact, I think that we have enough of technological resources that still allows us for a very engaged and fruitful advising relationship between students and faculty and students and staff.
Thanks, Pedro. There are a couple of questions that I'll give my panelists a little bit of a break that I can hopefully answer around testing. So let me just share with everybody that the college's approach to testing has been that we have been testing upon arrival, which has been successful. We have also been testing via random sample since the start, and we'll continue that process. It's been extremely successful. It's gotten rave reviews from our epidemiology group as well as our scientific advisory team that really deserves the credit for the modeling that is quite detailed. So again, a student is tested upon arrival. That would mean even a student returning back to campus would be tested upon arrival. Currently, we are using the PCR molecular nasal swab test with our testing partners, UC Health. We will eventually be, thanks to a CC parent who has been tremendous in support of the college, that we will be moving towards and adopting a same molecular test that's just as reliable and sensitive as the PCR, but allows the college to have a testing turnaround time of 15 to 30 minutes. And so we're excited to be able to bring that to campus, to have that in our on-site testing facility that will allow for a much rapid and much more numerous and robust testing strategy, more so than what we're doing today. So again, just to reiterate, today, every student is tested upon arrival, and then every student is a part of a random sampling environment where they could get asked via email to please come to the testing site, which we do for random sampling on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and please be a part of that random sample. We have also recently started to engage our off-campus students in that process, and we'll continue to grow our testing strategy, which again has been thorough and well thought out from the start. I'll also just remind every student that's on campus or not, that our student health center is for every student. And we want any student, anyone that feels like they potentially could have a symptom, could potentially feel like I've got a scratch in my throat, I'm just possibly not just feeling right today. We have a number of ways for students to get quickly in to be seen and to be tested, not just virtually, but also in person in terms of getting connected with an RN or a medical specialist. We have a unique triage line that's dedicated only to Colorado College for students to be able to call, get some medical advice, get a test ordered, and be sent to the nearest testing site if that happens to not be the one on campus. But students have multiple options, and please hear us on this. We want you to take advantage of those. Don't try to power through or feel like I might have a symptom and I'll just try to let it go for 24 hours. So please take advantage of those. That's why we put them in place. And it's fully dedicated to our CC campus community. Pedro, I might ask you to jump back in if you would, to discuss. There are a couple of questions where you could discuss a little bit about the difference that people saw in classes between hybrid, flex, and in-person.
Yeah, that has been I've been answering this question for quite a bit now. I think the main confusion is between hybrid and flex, right? I think that in-person classes is pretty self-explanatory, and in-person classes are classes that are meeting in person for the majority of the time, right? But there's a distinction between hybrid and flex because both have components, right, that are potentially in person and remote, right? So that's the gray area, right? So if you can imagine this gray area, there are two categories here. One category is hybrid, which means that the course has in-person components and remote components that are required for all students, right? So that is, a student would have to be living, there's a residency requirement pretty much attached to a hybrid course, right? Because the in-person component is required, right, for all students, right, that are taking the course. A flex course, on the other hand, that's not the case, right? So the flex course, right, a student could be taking that course completely remotely, right? But other students could be taking a fraction of the course remotely, but there are going to be some in-person components that there's an option, right, for students to participate. So that's kind of the main reasons. From a residency standpoint, a flex course doesn't require a student to be on campus, and a hybrid course would. I don't know if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. possibly for Dean Dickey, can you explain what dining and food services will look like for those students that are back on campus?
Thanks. We anticipate running dining services and access to meals is going to be pretty similar to what you're experiencing right now if you're on-campus students. As you know, though, we did move Rastel, and other facilities from dine-in facilities to grab and go. I know as some students have been sort of weighing the option of, do I maybe want to stay on campus? I've been extended an invitation. What is life going to look like on campus? There seems to be some confusion between what life looks like on campus under regular circumstances and what life looks like under quarantine. So I just want students to know if you're staying with us on campus, again, as I said, we're trying to reduce the likelihood of further quarantines. But unless you are a student who finds yourself in a quarantine or isolation situation, you are free to move about campus, just as you've been doing all along. And of course, as we've all reminded you, and thanked you for doing, wearing masks, the proper social distancing, frequent washing hands, respiratory etiquette, all those types of things. So the only times where students will find themselves, in their residence halls, in their rooms, able to come out, to have outdoor time and having meals delivered, that's a quarantine or isolation situation. If you don't find yourselves in that, students, again, you're free to move about campus. So I just wanted to clarify that. So again, you'll be used to, just as you're used to doing, going to get your grab and go, and some of the other locations on campus open as well for meals. And also access to, as Leslie mentioned, fitness center. I know the climbing gym will be opening up pretty soon. And again, with these facilities, a lot of things, particularly I know the climbing gym on an appointment basis, they've got a fogging machine to be able to sanitize after each use, limited number of people. So trying to make sure that our students have access to those resources.
Thank you for that. And Dean Dickey, since a couple of questions about just safe activities for students that will be remaining on campus. I know there has been a tremendous amount of work that our residential experience team and you and others have put into a robust as possible in COVID time sort of activity experience, both virtual as well as outdoors. Can you speak just to a little bit about some of the activities that students will have access to?
Oh, certainly, and we're excited to continue offering those. Just had a great conversation with Ryan Hammis, our Director of Outdoor Education, and again, following correct social distancing and other risk mitigation protocols, there will be opportunities allowed for students to get together, perhaps to go on hikes, to experience the outdoors. So those types of things are up and running. We do have a wonderful Director of Campus Activities and Student Orientation, that's Amy Hill. She and her team worked really hard on getting activity bags and things over to the halls for students who, again, found themselves in quarantine and isolation. Those types of things are available to all students. Kind of grab and go things to do in your rooms. The yoga mats, virtual campus activities night is coming up, students. So I know for our returning students, a lot of you have said that's kind of the highlight at the beginning of the year where you get to meet different student clubs and organizations. So all of that will happen virtually, but we're still running a lot of programs and activities and events and are continually amazed at not only the creativity that comes from our professional team, but students who run groups and organizations have been incredibly creative, and we've seen this since March, whether it's a cappella groups getting together and sing and teach other students how to do a song, whether we're doing virtual mariachi, whether we're doing virtual escape rooms and having magicians and just a whole host of activities and events that we've been able to transition to virtual. And then, as I mentioned, also a number of things that will happen in person for students as well with all of our protocols in place. So we're really excited to continuing offering that, as well as the various resources that offices on campus offer: Career Center, Butler Center, Wellness Resource Center. We're all here, folks, and excited to being able to work with our students.
Thank you, and thanks for the work on that. I'm gonna let President Edmonds sort of answer this, because we've got some good feedback from our El Paso County partners. President Edmonds, there are a couple of questions that revolve just around my students in South or Matthias would like to be able to get outdoors a little more. Would you like to share what we learned and what we were able to do with El Paso County Health?
Thank you, Brian. We had long conversations about the need for our students to be able to have more time outside. And today, El Paso County Health approved our students to be able to go outside at any time for as much time as they would like, as long as they were, I'm forgetting the word, but I don't want to say monitored, but monitored. They still have to stay in a quarantine situation. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, since Friday night, we have been meeting consistently and a lot with El Paso County Health, again, trying to mitigate and reduce transmission, but also having a quality experience for our students. So Brian, thank you for the question. We finished all morning. We spent with El Paso County Health. I want to acknowledge their work with us as we continue to come up with ways for us to offer a quality experience at a residential liberal arts college, and at the same time be cognitive of the fact that we are a downtown campus that is not closed off from the rest of the community. But yes, students now, as long as, I don't know if monitored is the right word, I suspect you get what I mean. Students can have outdoor time as much as needed. And Dean Dickey will be working with the residential life staff to coordinate that. But that's quite important, because Brian and I in our meetings were able to articulate the impact of these large quarantines on the well-being of our students physically and emotionally.
Thank you, President Edmonds. I appreciate that. And we will, so everyone knows, on behalf of every CC student, we'll continue to work diligently with our partners in health and find all the right options for CC and our block plan delivery. A couple of questions, possibly I'll toss to see if Dean Dickey can help with. But a couple of questions around students that are assigned to the lodges and whether, even if they don't have an in-person class, is that going to be an option for them to be able to move into?
Mm-hmm. Certainly. And go back to the point earlier. So we've got the lodges and we've got West Edge up there. And, you know, folks had said, if I'm not taking class, even if I'm not taking classes, are those spaces still available? Because we know, again, as our students move into the community, there's a limited number of housing. So yes, they can do so. And we're, for students who are not taking courses, you know, they can work directly through the leasing company up there. And again, to my point, if we have students who are taking classes and who are perhaps assigned up to the lodges and West Edge, our residential experience team would love to work with those students and again, move them more to our centralized campus here because the lodges in West Edge are several miles away. If students don't have their own transportation and again, they're approved to be on campus and taking classes, we just think it'll be more convenient for them to be here centrally. But again, those spaces are open up for students to be able to rent at lodges in West Edge.
It's great, thank you. I think that will answer several questions from the chat, so I appreciate the help there. And if I could lean on Pedro, if I could lean on you for this, I know I know this was outlined also in a letter, but a couple of questions, if I combine them to just sort of explain again to our community here and as well as on Facebook, how did the courses for Block 2, how they were selected around that context of academic progression?
Unmute. There's a couple of criteria that we were looking at. So one is we are constrained by the number of students that we can have around, right? So that's the first thing that I think everyone needs to understand is that we were not working under the assumption that we could have our 2,000 students or so, back on campus. So we have to figure out, how we would look for academic criteria, right, to allow students to potentially be back on campus next fall. So one of the things that we looked, and there are different course modalities as I explained before, right? While 2 of them don't require residency, but 2 do, right? So in-person and hybrid courses, right, are courses that require students to be on campus. So because students register for these courses, right, in the spring semester, what we tried to do was try to honor, right, those registration patterns and students that were registered for these courses, right, that would require them to be here. So we started there, right? So we started by eliminating the flex and the remote courses because those courses can be taken anywhere. So we looked at then the in-person courses and the hybrid courses. And to be honest, the number of students that are taking these courses was too large. So we had to make other restrictions to those 2 categories. So we decided by looking at the college was offering, the percentage of in-person courses that the college was offering was enough that allowed us to accept every student, right, that was taking an in-person class to be here because those are courses that the majority of it is in person. So that was the first thing. So we wanted to honor those students that registered for in-person classes. So we allowed them to come back. And then the other huge bottleneck that we have for progression are courses that have a lab designation, right? Courses that students need to, for that portion of the course, be on campus. And a lot of those courses are hybrid. So then that was the second part of the decision, was to look at those hybrid courses with a lab designation on it. And when we added the in-person plus that, it gave us, right, the number that we were comfortable with in terms of having students back on campus.
Thank you, Pedro. Appreciate it.
Brian, if I can just jump in here a minute, I'm seeing something pretty concerning in the chat box here about food not being delivered to South Hall for 2 days. I do know that food has been delivered. I was over there the other day myself. Pedro raised his hand as well. If there's somebody who's in South Hall who did not get food, apologize for that. We'll check into that. Please remember that your RLC is helping to coordinate our food service, Bon Appetit. And we've got, again, droves of faculty and staff who sign up to do the food deliveries to all of the residence halls where folks are in isolation or quarantine. So that is managed through our partner, Bon Appetit. And again, we've got folks who go over there every day and do this. So we do know that food deliveries have been happening, but if somebody missed their delivery, again, your RLC, Luis Valdez, is over there in South. Kaylee Crivello is over there in Matthias. That's your first point of contact, is your RLC that, hey, my food wasn't delivered. So again, these are 3-in-1 meal bags for those of you who may not know. And we've got the volunteers, again, our faculty and staff, who each bag has a room number on it, and we go up and down each hall and leave the bags and kind of knock on the door and if the student has their name posted on the door, hey, so-and-so, you know, food delivery out here. So we try to alert students when we're delivering meals as well. But again, please let your RLC know, and we'll do whatever we can to fix that situation. Thanks for letting us know.
Thank you, Rochelle. There are a couple of questions that I'll take that revolve around testing in quarantine. And some of you have asked, if my son or daughter is in quarantine, can't they get tested? And if it's a negative test, can't they be out of quarantine? I can assure you that we have worked diligently with our local health professionals and others on guidance around this. Unfortunately, it is not the recommendation at either the county or the state level. And so the reasoning behind this is that although most cases show symptoms between 5 and 7 days, possibly while in quarantine, it is still possible for someone to show symptoms and spread the virus day 12, day 13. So unfortunately, although we have and continue to do random sampling and testing of students in quarantine, a negative result, unfortunately, will not allow that individual out of quarantine. And the other question I will answer, a few came in on the chat, asked me about with flu season coming, how will we be able to also utilize testing for in the flu. The good news is some of the equipment that we hope to have here shortly will not only allow us to do rapid, very responsive molecular tests for COVID, but also for influenza A and B. So it'll be great to be able to have that access on campus for us to be able to narrow down exactly what symptoms or what's causing someone that has symptoms.
Hi, everyone. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat, and my inbox is blowing up a little bit. I know a lot of you do have questions again about lodges, West Edge. I want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Edwin Hamada, our Assistant Vice President for the Residential Experience, John Lauer, who's our Associate Vice President, and the tremendous team at the Residential Experience. I'm always happy to answer questions, but I really want to get you to the folks who are managing the logistics on the ground for that. So housing at Colorado College, housing at coloradocollege.edu is going to be the best resource for kind of drilling down to those little detailed questions that those folks are best able to help you out with and get you answers right away. Thanks for that.
Dean Dickey, might we also do a special session on just one similar to this, just based on housing and happy?
That's a great idea. We did a town hall, it's been a couple of months ago, on food and housing, and certainly those are always some of the critical questions that people have. So by all means, we'll get together something else with that team and give you folks some more answers on housing. Good suggestion.
Thank you for that. I had a couple of questions as we sort of close. At least just for this session, and around the idea of when will students be notified that they are invited to come back as we start to get students back into campus for their class or for particular housing. Dean Dickey or Pedro?
So I have a list of the students that have been approved for academic reasons, and Dean Dickey and myself are going to be sending personal communication to each individual student that had been approved for academic reasons tomorrow. So that's the so be looking for an email from both of us tomorrow for those academic reasons. And I know that Dean Dickey has been in communications with students that were also allowed to be on campus for non-academic reasons. I'll let Dean Dickey explain that process.
Mm-hmm. And again, a number of students, I saw some questions in the chat box. President Moore did say at the beginning, we extend that invitation to Bridge students. So again, some of you may not have heard from us. Yes, we're in the process of contacting students. So again, Vice Provost De Araujo and I think are anticipated tomorrow or by Monday at the latest for students regarding academic progression. So that's kind of the first bucket of students who already have approval to be back. RAs are in that group as well. Again, we mentioned students who will go through an application process and be approved, as well as some of those students who are already pre-approved, international students, Bridge scholars. So again, in the process of reaching out to those students. And if you're not in those categories of students and you feel that you need our assistance, again, I'm directing you to our COVID emergency fund, primarily for finances. If you need financial assistance, and then we've got that, our other email, the requests at coloradocollege.edu. Let me look that up. I think I just said that wrong. Again, if you're a person who feels like you're experiencing housing insecurity and you want to say to us, I really do need to be able to have a home there on campus.
And as we kind of come to a close, at least for this session, a couple of questions just around in general for Block 2. What is the number of students that would be on campus?
I can try to tackle that one because we were just doing the math this morning. So right now, if we add all of the categories and we double count, subtracting the double counts, we are at around 780 students total that are allowed to be on campus. Doesn't necessarily mean they will be living on campus, right? On campus. So, but the approval list right now is at 783.
And everybody, just to make sure I give you that right email address again, if you facing housing insecurity, campus appeals at coloradocollege.edu. Campus appeals at coloradocollege.edu.
Thank you for that. I also want to, and I'll invite all of the panelists as well as the presidents to say any closing thoughts that they might have. I want to say first, thank you for joining us today. I realize that not every question can get answered. I'll encourage you again to send questions into the COVID email that I talked about at the beginning to make sure that we can answer those questions. We'll do the best we can to get them posted to our COVID Q&A website. We'll continue to answer questions. There'll continue to be new questions. And I can assure you that the campus and our partners in local health are actively, daily working towards a goal that's going to be a CC experience for the block plan that I think will get us to a good point. I do want to just turn it over to my panelists as well as to the presidents for any closing thoughts from each or any of you.
Again, I just wanted to thank our community, our students for being responsible, and I want to thank you for the care that you've shown to each other, our faculty and staff for volunteering, our parents and alumni for offering suggestions, help, support, critique. To Brian's point, it's all making us better as we experience COVID-19 during this academic year. I just, again, want to just acknowledge how much I appreciate all of the efforts.
Obviously, I join that. The people you see on the panel, the people who work for them, we have some folks putting in 20-hour days. So thank you to everybody who's contributing to this.
I add my thanks as well to the community, to our students, our parents, our alumni, everyone that President Edmonds just mentioned. And somebody sort of said, make sure you mention groups of 10 or less. As I went through the sort of our standard risk mitigation protocols, I think I might have overlooked that. So again, as we continue to do our programming and events on campus, we'll be observing groups of 10 or less as well. So wanted to make sure that wasn't left off the list. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, thank you again for being a part of this session today. We'll continue to communicate. We'll continue to answer questions. We'll continue to get information out. We'll see you next time as we do these for various constituents. But thank you again for being a part.